power, poison, pain, and joy inside my DNA. I got hustle, though ambition flow inside my DNA. I was born like this and born like this, immaculate conception. I transform like this, perform like this, wish out you a new weapon. I don't contemplate, I meditate, then off your head. This that put the kids to bed. This that I got realness. I just kill cause it's in my DNA. I got millions, I got riches building in my DNA. I got dark, I got evil that rot inside my DNA. I got off, I got trouble, some heart inside my DNA. I just
KBLA Talk 1580. So pleased to have joining me this morning to sort out all the things. One of our great historians, he holds the Morse Professorship of History and African American Studies at the University of Houston. He has written many books, which you can find in wherever you get your books or online at Amazon. He's got his Ph.D. in history from Columbia, J.D. from UC Berkeley, and a B.A. from Princeton. And you can find him on YouTube. He is lecturing on YouTube all the time, or just stick around here. He is an official contributor to KBLA Talk 1580. Dr. Gerald Horne, good morning.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks for coming. So much to unpack. It is the birthday of Nelson Mandela. Just went to South Africa this year. And so the KBLA delegation has been treated to a virtual tour of Johannesburg, Cape Town, and also Zimbabwe. I wonder if you would start us off with a few thoughts about South Africa and Mandela on his birthday. It was interesting to see the younger generation there in South Africa, the folks I encountered, who really don't have quite as charitable of an interpretation of the fact that Mandela did not get the land back, that, he went for truth and reconciliation. Then you go to the Apartheid Museum and you kind of get a better understanding of why, but give us a little context.
So Nelson Mandela died in his mid-90s, about a decade or so ago. He was jailed for about 27, 28 years, only emerging in February 1990. And I think that perhaps the disappointment with Nelson Mandela's legacy that you just suggested is embedded in a segment of the South African youth may be a reflection of the fact that when Mr. Mandela was freed, it came as his major allies, speaking of the socialist countries in Eastern Europe, were decomposing. The Berlin Wall had fallen in November 1989, whereas the forces backing his opponents, speaking of the apartheid regime led by the United States and NATO, were subsequently strengthened. And so Mandela and the African National Congress were playing a relatively weak hand. And that helps to explain today's crisis in South Africa, which you've just witnessed. But having said that, I don't think that we should downplay or diminish the significance or profundity of what Mandela and his comrades were able to do. That is to say, ousting from power this bloodthirsty apartheid regime, which had not been predicted as recently as, say, the early 1980s.
Yeah, and just going to the Apartheid Museum, I mean, I was a student fighting against that, but when you go to the museum and you really see the width and breadth of this regime and just all the things they did, the torture, the sort of Nazi-esque ways that they moved and their gear and trappings, it's really just a reminder that this was not anything small and that it was not anything brief. And in fact, many of their traditions, their racial attitudes and such are still really entrenched there.
Indeed. And not only entrenched in South Africa, but I think flying under the radar is the story of how so many in the so-called white minority in South Africa have retrenched here in the United States. You're probably familiar, I'm sure, with Elon Musk, born in the land of apartheid. But he's not alone. I think I've spoken on this program before about Roelof Botha, who is the leader of Sequoia Capital in Silicon Valley. a major funder of U.S. technology. Peter Thiel, Thiel, who was a major comrade of Donald J. Trump, raised in illegally occupied Namibia under apartheid rule. And once again, I'm not sure if even in this country, I would say particularly in this country, is there a real understanding of what Mandela and his comrades were up against and what they were able to accomplish.
Yeah, that's a great point. So Ronnie from Orange County had called, and he was talking about the South African nuclear program, which we know that under apartheid, South Africa government was developing their secret nuclear program. Supposedly there were 6 nuclear warheads that they had. And my understanding is that it was the apartheid government that shut that program down because they were concerned about what would happen to it if apartheid fell. Ronnie, I'm not quite sure what your question is, but here's Dr. Horne to answer it.
Yes, Dr. Horne. Go right ahead, Doctor.
No, sorry. I didn't know you were on the line. Sorry about that.
Yeah, go ahead, Ronnie.
No, Dr. Horne, finish your thought real quick, and then I'll follow up real quick and land.
Well, no, I think Dominique is on the money with regard to the apartheid regime concerned about what a democratic government would do with nuclear weapons, although it's fair to say that the Mandela government carried through on the pledge to make South Africa nuclear weapons free.
I 100% agree with you, and as you already know, there was an actual compact of all significant nations that have been seeking nuclear weapons in the continent to sign that pact, and it is, I don't remember the alphabet. Sharing with the audience overall is the ANC coming to power. I think if we could just make this little gumbo home cooking, is not to let a black man, the ANC black man who succeeded de Klerk, to have a nuclear weapon.
Do you think that's a factor, Dr. Horne?
Well, I think there's probably something to that. Look what happened in Libya, for example. Libya was enticed and encouraged to give up its nuclear program, and of course, it was immediately followed by a NATO bombing campaign. I think that there was concern about not only an ANC government led by a black man, but an ANC government that was in coalition with the South African Communist Party, which is still the case. I think that factor is oftentimes ignored on this side of the Atlantic, at least in our community, but it's certainly not ignored in Washington and NATO.
Yeah, good point. It was a great trip, Dr. Horne. I was not expecting to be so enamored with Zimbabwe, but I'm definitely going back there. And in both Zimbabwe and South Africa, I encountered people who talked to me about this idea of community based tourism, or what I would call fair trade tourism, and the fact that many of these countries, the U.S., but particularly European countries, they're doing these prepaid packages where you get your vacation prepaid, and all of the tax revenue for that goes to the country where you bought the package. If you buy a prepaid package in Europe or the United States, all that tax revenue goes here. It doesn't go to the government of Zimbabwe or South Africa or Ghana, wherever you're traveling to. And then all of those companies that are being in that prepaid package, being part of that, are white owned. So what it does is it effectively pimps out the South African and Zimbabwean land, the nature, the beauty, and the people, and gives almost no tourist revenue from those trips to the people, because no one's using black-owned or even locally owned tourist companies, and all that, those tax dollars are going out. So there's very little benefit to the locals, and how they're starting to organize against that. So I wonder what your thoughts are about that, because I feel like in South Africa and also in Zimbabwe, more than I saw in West Africa, I still see Europeans controlling everything.
Well, with regard to Southern Africa, that's the legacy, obviously, of the invasion of South Africa in 1652 by the Dutch, then followed by French Protestants shortly thereafter. Also following your footsteps in Zimbabwe was Floyd Money Mayweather, the the boxing champion. And true to his nickname, he was handing out $100 bills in Zimbabwe like it was confetti, which obviously endeared him to a significant percentage of the population. I'm happy to see that he traveled to Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
And you too, Dominique, because Zimbabwe has suffered under punishing sanctions because the government had the gumption to try to roll back the fruits of settler colonialism. That is to say, taking the land back from European invaders, some of whom had only arrived post-1945. And Washington and London and Australia has tried to drive the government into the ditch. They've been able to survive. In fact, the president of Iran was just in Zimbabwe just a few days ago as well. And Iran has established manufacturing facilities in Zimbabwe.
Wow.
So the government has been able to survive, but the people have suffered grievously.
Well, yeah, and we did see that. We actually, just even trying to fly into Zimbabwe, we had to go back to Johannesburg and, go all the way around because the European airlines are punishing them. And you can see it as an example of the way that the West is punishing Zimbabwe for Mugabe taking back some of that land. But from what I talked to, the people there were like, yeah, we wish we could get more of the land back. And it's interesting because the way that Mugabe is reported on and sort of demonized in the Western media, even more than I realized, it doesn't match with what the sentiments, at least that I ran into in that country, really are. That people are like, yeah, can we get more of our land back, please? And, I just, it reminds me of the United States in the sense that we got our so-called freedom, but we never got it. We never got our 40 acres and a mule. And that leaves you with limited power.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the United States in this context because it's striking to juxtapose the United States and Southern Africa, particularly in light of the NAACP convention convening in Boston in a few days. And recall that it was in 1950 that the NAACP convention in Boston purged the left. They went after Paul Robeson, the great actor, activist, socialist with a vengeance. Since that time, the NAACP has not deigned to consort with forces on the left, including, I might say, one Mary Baraka. And what's remarkable is that even though we're in crisis with the Supreme Court overthrowing affirmative action, if you look at the Wall Street Journal, particularly today, they're just grinning and applauding this overthrow of affirmative action. You would think that they weren't so much concerned about Wall Street as they are about pounding black people into the dust.
Yeah.
And yet I don't see any kind of effort in our community in terms of trying to rethinking how we got to this point. It would be as if Nelson Mandela was jailed for 27 years and then after coming out of prison was being boycotted by broader forces, which of course did not happen.
Well, I think it is, for me, Southern Africa brought up a lot more about the United States than other parts of Africa because the way that, that repression is going on, the subversion of affirmative action where black people seem to be last in line to get the benefits of that, and the lingering Jim Crow / apartheid attitudes are much more, of course, close since it's only been 28 years there. Just the blatant racism that we ran into. And then when people would hear the American accents, they would back off a little bit, but still just, and I'm talking about white people, of course, was kind of eye-opening. Well, I'm glad you're here, Dr. Gerald Horne. I want to see if you can shed some light when we come forward on this latest dust-up. Well, I don't know if you dust-up. Latest escalation, the war in Ukraine, and how it's impacting world food supplies. And I know you'll connect the dots for us. It's KBLA Talk 1580.
More of First Things First with Dominique DePrima when we come forward.
Have you heard about Lendustry? Lendistry is a national Black-led small business lender that is headquartered right here in LA. Once you've started your business, Lendistry provides flexible financing options starting at $50,000 to help you access the affordable capital needed to grow. Whether financing is needed to increase working capital, acquire a business, purchase inventory and equipment, or refinance debt, Lendistry has a solution for you. Lending products range from traditional business term loans and non-revolving lines of credit to SBA 7A loans and commercial real estate financing. Lendistry's pre-application process is simple and does not impact your credit score. Visit lendistry.com/KBLA to learn more and to get started with an application right from the website.
MVP's bonus days are back at Lowe's. Find special savings on top brands like DeWalt. Right now, save $60 when you buy a DeWalt impact driver or drill for just $99 each. Plus, MVP's Pro Rewards members will earn 3 times the bonus points when shopping the Pro Zone. Shop in-store and online today. Lowe's knows savings. Lowe's knows pros. DeWalt offer valid 7/17 through 8/2. Bonus points calculated before taxes and fees after applicable discounts if any. Valid through 7/28. Subject to change.
The $5 cravings box is back at Taco Bell, and it's the real thing. We're talking a chalupa supreme, a cheesy, beefy 5-layer burrito, a crunchy taco, cinnamon twist, and a medium drink, all for just $5. That's a lot of food for not a lot of dollars. In other words, a wise business deal, like greeting clients with a firm handshake and a delicious 3-course meal. That's only $5. Order your $5 cravings box on the Taco Bell app today. At limited participating U.S. Taco Bell locations for a limited time only while supplies last. Contact local store for price and participation which vary. Drinks exclude freezes. Price excludes tax.
Mom's early Alzheimer's diagnosis was hard to take.
And when I left the oven on, we decided together that it was time to see a doctor and make a plan.
Early detection gave us more time to seek out information and support as a family.
If you or your family are noticing changes, it could be Alzheimer's. Talk about seeing a doctor together. For more information, visit alz.org/time-to-talk. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
The conversation continues right now with Dominic DePrima on First Things First.
Yeah, I do want to point out, Dr. Gerald Horne, that I learned that a lot of those folks in Zimbabwe are getting paid less than $10 a day, so I guess a $100 bill goes a lot further there than it does here. So Floyd Mayweather Jr.'s got himself some fans for life.
Well, that's for sure. It was quite remarkable. He not only flew to Zimbabwe on his private jet, but he endorsed the government, which is about to experience election. He endorsed ZANU-PF, the ruling party. And I wish I knew what the backstory was in terms of why he did that, why he went to Zimbabwe in the first place.
Well, I mean, the only thing I saw was that there's a member of his entourage who's a supporter of the president that, like, you know, is part of his, a guy that he buys gold from, I guess. That's part of his entourage that may have made that connection. I don't know. You know, but he's going to South Africa too, and I love it. Maybe some more celebrities will not only go to Ghana, Ghana's great, but visit more of the continent. Speaking of the motherland, I mean, you've talked on this show about how Africa has a different relationship with Russia, with the Ukraine, and with this whole war than other parts of the world, partly because of the relationship with Ukraine and, I mean, with Russia, and the support Russia has given to certain African governments and initiatives. But Ukraine, quiet as it's kept, I didn't realize what a big grain exporter they really are.
Ukraine has been a major exporter of grain, and given the war, this has contributed to famine-like conditions, not least in East Africa, not least in Somalia. As a result, Turkey and the United Nations had broken an agreement whereby Ukraine could export its commodities, speaking of grain, through the Black Sea. However, Russia charged that a good deal of this exporting was not taking place to Africa. It was taking place, in fact, to Europe. And so that's led to a rupture in this deal. The bottom line is that the war is not going very well. contrary to what you might hear from the mainstream media in this country, not to mention the White House. You see this with regard to the resignation of Ben Wallace, the head of the military in Britain, who was more hawkish than the Pentagon on this conflict. You see that in the resignation of Prime Minister Mark Rutte in the Netherlands. You see this with regard to President Zelensky of Ukraine, his temper tantrum, when at the NATO summit in Lithuania just a few days ago, he denounced many of his erstwhile allies, including the United States of America, which did not go down very well in Biden's entourage. So this is a real crisis that's unfolding, and it's going to have impact on the presidential elections. It may allow, believe it or not, the Trump Republicans to masquerade as proponents of peace, although I think Cornell West, well, I mean, the last laugh may be on us, I'm afraid to say, because as Cornell West points out, if Trump is elected, it may contribute to a civil war-like situation in this country. And if you look at the New York Times just yesterday, on the front page was a story about how if Trump gets elected in 2024, he plans to conduct a purge of the civil service. He plans to consolidate more power in the White House. In other words, he plans, quite bluntly, to be a kind of tin-pot dictator.
I was definitely wanting to pivot to that because, it's a blueprint really that they're talking about, or at least a plan to change the structure of the United States government, to put more power in the hands of the presidency. So it will be, like you said, a dictatorship. I mean, more of an authoritarian kind of system. And so, we could have Kim Trump Jong-il or whatever. I mean, it's like he wants to be Duterte. He wants to be, it's not just that he wants love letters, from dictators. He wants to be one. And they're moving to create such a plan. But is that even legal? Is it constitutional? It seems like it's counter to the whole concept of, or at least the philosophical concept of the United States government, which is that we were getting rid of an imperial, monarchy, right? And supposedly replacing it with one man, one vote. Although I know we're not quite there yet on the one man, one woman, one vote thing. This seems like it's counter to the whole constitutional concept.
Well, as I'm sure you know, what's constitutional is adjudged by the U.S. Supreme Court, which right now has a 6-3 Republican or conservative majority. And I'm sure they'll rubber stamp whatever Mr. Trump comes forward with. We already know that during his first regime, 2017 to 2021, he had unleashed the Internal Revenue Service on his political opponents. He had tried to encourage the department, his political opponents. You can imagine that will be on steroids in January 2025 if he returns to office. And I'm afraid to say that many who are on a station like KBLA will probably be in the crosshairs.
Oh yeah, I mean that's when I'll be moving to MPC Village in Zimbabwe. But I mean, here's the thing, Dr. Horne. I mean, he's talking about putting the military under the direct control of the president. He's talking about taking the power of the purse away from Congress. I mean, really, like, why do we even need a Congress and a Supreme Court if they're going to put all of the power in the hands of the president?
And I'm sure you noticed that story about Florida, where Trump Jr., Governor DeSantis, was trying to organize what amounted to a private militia.
Yeah.
Believe it or not.
What is it? What was it? The Florida State Police or something like that, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's.
But that's not over yet. I mean, that can still happen, right?
Of course, it can still happen.
Yeah.
And as I said, we already know that despite the Senate Judiciary Committee approving more nominees in recent months, the fact is that the judiciary, starting with the Supreme Court, is still under the control of the MAGA Republicans which means that they will likely rubber stamp whatever comes forth from Governor DeSantis or Mr. Trump.
I mean, but just to be clear, we have the National Guard. That's what we think of when we think of state police, right? Or state troopers. But this is different. This is like a personal police force for the governor to control. The National Guard is federal, right? And state police are still law enforcement agencies, are not directly under the control of the governor. So we're talking about like his personal police force.
It reminds me of what Governor Huey Law in Louisiana in the 1930s and early 1940s tried to do, which of course was then replicated in a movie, Hollywood movie, involving the star Broderick Crawford playing him. What Governor DeSantis, he's trying to get to the right of Donald J. Trump, which is not easy. And so I don't know if you saw the homophobic ad that he released, which was really quite startling. He was trying to accuse Mr. Trump of being a friend of the LGBTQ community. He said that he was not a friend. It's really trying to whip up the worst and most base instincts in the electorate.
Yeah. I mean, thing is, he's not really getting that much traction, but I guess it's early. And well, I guess he's the closest contender, and it's still early in the race. But I think that's exactly right. To the right of Trump lays a lot of hellish things. We've got news, traffic, and sports, and we continue the conversation with Dr. Gerald Horne on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580 is an intervention. When we come forward, includes you. KBLA Talk 1580, turning pain into power.
Good morning, I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Today is expected to be another day of investigators combing through the belongings of suspected Long Island, New York serial killer Rex Heuermann. Detectives were inside Heuermann's home Monday with reports saying cops found nearly 300 firearms in a walled-off vault behind a metal door in his basement. Heuermann remains behind bars on a suicide watch in a Suffolk County, New York jail following his arrest last week. In Illinois, 2 African-American grandparents are denied bond after they were accused of killing their 5-year-old granddaughter. Cops say Clint Elwoods and his wife Lisa Jones both confessed to abusing Jada Moore, who had temporarily been placed in their custody. The suspects face a life sentence if convicted. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
Prime members save more at your Amazon Fresh store. As a Prime member, you'll save 10% on hundreds of items in store, from organic produce to pantry staples to handcrafted pizza. Head to Amazon.com/fresh locations and find a store near you.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Things continue to move in the right direction for Magic Johnson in his attempts to become part owner of the NFL Washington Commanders. The NFL Finance Committee had a conference call meeting on Monday and voted unanimously to approve the Commanders sale. Current owner Dan Snyder has agreed to sell the team for $6.05 billion. Magic is part of a group headed by billionaire Josh Harris that has agreed to buy the team. NFL owners still must vote Thursday in Minneapolis to give the sale final approval, but the Finance Committee's decision is crucial. The Finance Committee evaluates all potential owners when a team is up for sale. When an ownership group gets the blessing of the Finance Committee, the 32 team owners tend to vote the same way. Magic Johnson is just 2 days away from joining one of the most exclusive memberships in the world of sports. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
Okay, team, line's already around the block, and we're open in 10. Yesterday, we had 3-hour wait time.
Chef Pierre's staff is a little under-seasoned.
Why is this pot not boiling yet?
An experienced sous chef is the missing ingredient in his kitchen.
What do you mean, plate or a bowl? You work at La Pasta in La Cup.
Indeed can help him hire great people fast.
I need Indeed.
Indeed, you do. You can schedule and conduct virtual interviews all from your employer dashboard. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
What's up?
I'm tired of feeling so bloated.
That used to be me. Then I got this.
Align Bloating Relief plus food digestion. A probiotic, right?
Yeah, it works naturally with your gut to help soothe occasional bloating and gas. Plus, it has vitamin B12 to aid digestion by helping convert food to cellular energy. 2 benefits, 1 capsule.
Align Bloating Relief plus food digestion from the #1 doctor-recommended probiotic brand. Learn more at alignprobiotics.com.
Did you know that feeling sluggish or weighed down could be signs that your digestive system isn't working at its best? But taking Metamucil every day can help. Metamucil supports your daily digestive health using a special plant-based fiber called psyllium. Psyllium works by forming a gel in your digestive system to trap and remove the waste that weighs you down. Metamucil's gelling action also helps to promote heart health and slows down sugar absorption to promote healthy blood sugar levels. Start feeling lighter and more energetic by taking Metamucil every day.
At Grainger, we're for the ones who pay attention to every little detail. The ones who fuss, tinker, and sweat the small stuff. Because you know the tiniest thing can make the biggest difference when it comes to keeping business moving. We get it. We're the same way, offering access to product experts to help you quickly and easily find what you need. So whatever your industry, you know you're always getting professional-grade products. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Do you have heart failure and often hear,
"Those stomach issues ruined your birthday"?
"You're too tired to play catch, Grandpa."
Sweetie, you haven't touched your tools since the carpal tunnel syndrome diagnosis.
If these seemingly unrelated symptoms sound familiar, talk to your cardiologist. Ask about transthyretin amyloid cardiomyopathy, or ATTR-CM, a rare and underdiagnosed disease that gets worse over time. Learn more at connecttoyourheart.com. That's connecttoyourheart.com. Sponsored by Pfizer. Heard any other talk radio lately that sounds anything like this? We didn't think so. You're listening to Unapologetically Progressive, KBLA Talk 1580.
Talking with Dr. Gerald Horne. So many questions, so little time. Speaking of the 45th president, the president now, the former president now saying he has gotten a letter from the Justice Department saying he's a target of the, not just the documents probe, he already got that letter. Now he's got a letter around the January 6th investigation saying that he is a target. That means he probably will be indicted in that case as well?
That seems to be the case. That seems to be the import of the article right now on the New York Times website as the lead item. Mr. Trump is facing yet another indictment. And of course, in Georgia, in the next few days, if not the next few weeks, the black prosecutor in Fulton County, Fonnie Willis, will probably be bringing another indictment.
Right.
Mr. Trump. And so,
which will bring us to 5 or 4.
Let's see.
I'm having trouble.
There's one in New York.
Right.
There's the documents case. There's the January 6th case, and then there'll be the Georgia case. And then there's the civil judgment with regard to
Eugene Carroll.
Molestation
Right.
of Eugene Carroll.
Right. So.
And the beat goes on.
The beat goes on. But I was actually surprised that a Georgia court did not grant Trump's lawyers a request to block that Georgia investigation. We've had so many terrible judicial decisions, from the Black Wall Street to affirmative action to, legalized discrimination in the website case, it's overturning of the president's student loan forgiveness. But the Georgia Supreme Court rejected a request by the former president to block the DA from prosecuting him. Did that surprise you?
It did. I assume that the Georgia court was concerned about the precedent that would be set. That is to say, the Supreme Court of the United States does not necessarily have to worry about presidents because they set precedent. They overturn presidents. They form presidents. A lower court has to be concerned. And, for example, there might be a case down the road where a black defendant could get a prosecutor from prosecuting him or her, for example, and they have to be concerned about that precedent.
So Willis's case moves forward so far, This is seeming like a lot of legal jeopardy. Meanwhile, the president's team is thinking of the former president's team, of how to consolidate power and give him that strongman, those strongman powers should he ascend to the White House. And I got to say, just listening to you, Dr. Horne, I feel like you think he's got a good chance of being reelected.
Well, look, this guy in November 2020 got 75 million votes despite a horrible record.
Yeah.
Now he's going to be running for re-election. I'm sure you're following the so-called no labels movement with former U.S. Senator Joseph Lieberman, present U.S. Senator Joseph Manchin of West Virginia. And it's a movement that likely will run a third-party candidate who most likely will drain votes away
from Biden,
from the Democrats, and will be a plus for Mr. Trump. So I would say there's a 50-50 chance that Mr. Trump will be returning to the White House as the 47th U.S. president.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting that Joe Lieberman and Joe Manchin have a sudden urge to form a third party and, make a real run at the White House. Now, I've noticed also that the New York Post, which is a conservative rag, is now quoting Dr. Cornell West every other day. And I feel like it's the same thing. They think this will drain votes from Biden.
Well, I look at Cornell's race differently because if you run to Texas, for example, the Republicans have a stranglehold on Texas. We need to shake up this state. If we can shake up Texas, we can shake up the United States of America and therefore shake up the world. And so,
but are Republicans going to vote for Cornell West?
No, I'm hoping. Recall that a study just revealed that in November 2022, black turnout was only about 50%. Hopefully, Cornell could drive up black turnout to maybe 70%, which would not only be a plus for the peace movement, it could probably redound to the benefit of the Democrats as well.
No, yeah, okay, I can see what you're saying. Just to get people out to the polls because they got to vote on other stuff besides just president. Dr. Cornell West is brilliant and everything like that. I just, I kind of don't see the purpose, but okay, it's not like he's going to win the presidency, but certainly that gives me a little bit of a different perspective on it. And I got to ask you about Alabama because this is one of the rare decent decisions that the U.S. Supreme Court made, right? That Alabama has to redraw their maps, their congressional maps, to give at least 2 black districts after they gerrymandered all the black people into one district. But it seems like the Republicans are already moving to defy the Supreme Court and not do that and just try to keep the one black district.
Well, that is the case, but I think that U.S. Supreme Court decision that you're making reference to, if it's executed, if it's implemented, will have significant impact in 2024. For example, it'll probably lead to another black congressperson emerging in Louisiana. Keep in mind as well that one of the reasons why the Republicans took the House in November 2022 was their ability to flip districts in New York State.
Yeah.
Now the courts in New York State are moving in a different direction, and 4 of those seats might be flipped away from the Republicans. So amidst the gloom and doom, there are a few rays of sunshine.
Yeah. So what happens if the Republicans defy their own extreme court and say, no, we're not going to do this? I mean, how does that enforced? How do how is that implemented, a Supreme Court decision?
Well, I'm not really sure because it reminds me of what happened when Governor Wallace stood in the schoolhouse door to prevent the University of Alabama from being desegregated. Now,
right.
Ultimately, he backed down, and I take it that ultimately the Republicans will back down in Alabama.
Yeah, I just can't see Joe Biden sending out the federal police or FBI to force the Republicans, which I don't even know how you do that.
That's an open question.
Yeah. Talking with Dr. Gerald Horne. You know, when we come forward, I want to get your quick take on this story of this woman who disappeared for 24 or 48 hours. Is Carly Russell, when she reported seeing a toddler walking on the freeway. This is one of those moments where I wish Dick Gregory was here, because I feel like there's something so odd about this story. Just wonder your thoughts. A black woman goes missing. Social media goes crazy. Are you guys going to give this missing woman the attention that you give other missing women? That attention starts to happen. The woman reappears, and now we're hearing very, very little. It's KBLA Talk 1580.
She's reclaiming her time on KBLA Talk 1580. More First Things First with Dominique DePrima when we come forward.
Ew. Gotta get rid of this old Backstreet Boys t-shirt.
Tell me why.
Because it stinks, boys.
Tell me why.
I've washed it so many times, but the odor won't come out.
Tell me why.
No, you tell me why I can't get rid of this odor.
Have you tried new Downy Rinse and Refresh? It doesn't just cover up odors, it helps remove them.
Wow, it worked, guys.
Yeah.
Downy Rinse and Refresh removes more odor in one wash than the leading value detergent in 3 washes. Find it wherever you buy laundry products.
Gain presents a tale of longing and long-lasting scent. Dear love of my life, we were on the 12B bus when I caught a whiff. A scent so fresh, so life-changing, I had to find its source. I didn't know if you were the woman in the pink freshly washed cardigan or the retired mailman next to me, but I knew one of you was my soulmate. Ah, the scent of Gain Flings. Add Gain scent beads for an even longer-lasting scent.
Hollywood Walk of Fame stars in 2024. Stay tuned to find out who's in next year's class. I'm Aisha Cairo with your K-Black Minute News. A new group of 31 entertainment professionals across film, television, radio, recording, and sports entertainment will have their names etched into Hollywood's history in 2024. One of the most celebrated names on the list was the beloved Chadwick Boseman. Others for the class of 2024 in Hollywood Walk of Fame was this year's Oscar winner Michelle Yeoh in the motion picture category. Other notable names include Chris Pine, Gwen Stefani, Andre, Dr. Dre, Young, Otis Redding, Christina Ricci, Brandy Norwood, Harry Washington, and more. The dates for the star ceremonies have not yet been scheduled. To find out all 31 inductees, visit youtube.com/Walk of Fame.
Gotta stay fresh, my house shot with a rest bar,
Have you visited us online for the grand opening of KBLA.store? For the best in new merch, gift ideas, books, media, and more, log on to KBLA.store. Be sure to check out our KBLA team favorites at KBLA.store today. That's KBLA.store for all the official merch on your favorite talk radio station, KBLA Talk 1580.
The bounce is back.
At Charmin, we heard you shouldn't talk about going to the bathroom in public, so we decided to sing about it.
Roll Charmin ultra strong when you drop in the beat. It cleans with way less effort on your seat. Yeah, roll it, drop it. Yeah, roll it, drop it. Charmin flows extra strong from the road. Your butt hella clean while you're sitting on the bowl. Yeah, it's all you need for that bathroom groove. Get you in and out without nothing to prove.
Charmin Ultra Strong cleans better so you can use less. Enjoy the go with Charmin.
Your ancestors' favorite radio station, and your favorite morning show host. Let's get back to Dominique DePrima right now.
Dr. Gerald Horne, I think I need to borrow your brain for a speed round because there's several things I wanted to run by you, but one of them is Carly Nicole Russell, the woman who was driving on the freeway, says she saw a toddler walking along, called 911 to report the kid, tried to help the kid, disappeared. There's a massive search, and then she returns home and has talked to the police, but no one's talking. We don't know what happened, where she was. Her boyfriend said she was kidnapped. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I don't know either, since the family is tight-lipped, but I suspect that she was abducted and escaped. But the good news is it's put the spotlight on the fact that black women are undergoing an epidemic of being missing, soon being kidnapped. It's hard to say. black women are 7% of the U.S. population, but about 35% of women who are missing. And there are about thousands of black women and girls, I should also add, that have disappeared without leaving a trace. And obviously, there needs to be a significant focus on that question, and hopefully the Carly Russell case will lead to that.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, in putting it in context, they said that that child might have been bait. It might not have really even been, there could have just been someone put there to force someone to stop and try to help. Our city attorney here in Los Angeles has advised lawmakers not to join actors or hotel workers or anyone on the picket lines, or else risk being in a position where they'd have to recuse themselves from votes. And of course, it makes me wonder, did John Lewis have to recuse himself from votes? To me, it seems like ridiculous advice, asking you to put on your legal hat.
Well, I really don't understand that kind of advice. It's well known that elected officials, people of goodwill, you don't cross picket lines, for example, that unions throw up. Oftentimes you walk alongside union members when they're picketing, such as the writers and the actors in Hollywood or the hotel workers, for example. So I'm scratching my head trying to figure out what was on his mind when that opinion was issued.
Yeah, well, you know, Heidi Feldstein Soto is the same city attorney who's trying to dilute the Freedom of Information Act, that saying that, you know, trying to add changes to the law so that agencies don't have to hand over information to reporters. So I'm beginning to think that her hold on the her understanding on you know, our freedoms is a little slim. I mean, to me, that would mean you would have to recuse yourself from votes if you got contributions from labor, which most lawmakers do. It's just, to me, it seems stupid, but maybe I'm missing something. Okay, so the judge here in LA County has blocked the watchdog from making those gang members, sheriff gang members, deputy criminal gang members, show their tattoos on the basis that it could be a labor violation of some kind. Of course, the so-called union, the Sheriff's Association, has sued, and a judge has granted a preliminary injunction to stop the sheriff's deputy from having to show their tattoos.
Well, I think you can unravel and understand both of these recent cases that you've mentioned by looking at aspirations for higher office or higher positions in judiciary, particularly with regard to city attorney. Anybody in that position is looking to be mayor, looking to go to Congress. Obviously, the Hollywood moguls will smile fondly upon her opinion. And likewise, a judge who says that a officer of the law does not have to reveal a tattoo that may indicate that that officer of the law is part of some sort of neo-Nazi or ultra-right formation is probably angling for an appointment to the federal judiciary, assuming that Mr. Trump returns to office in November 2024.
Okay, look at the big picture is what you're saying. I feel, Dr. Gerald Horne, that these Hollywood studio executives, notably Barry Diller and Bob Iger from Disney, are really engaged in a very intentional talking point movement, speaking of Talking Point Tuesday, to cry poor, to disparage the actors and the writers as being unrealistic, and are taking a very heavy-handed, draconian approach to the strike. There was an anonymous quote that the strategy around the writers' strike is to wait until the writers bleed out, to wait until the writers and actors are desperate before these producers and executives come to the table in earnest. I want to get your thoughts on that when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
A safe place to go loud. A great place for progressive politics. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Are you interested in catching up on all the latest entertainment news, trending topics, and exciting interviews? I got you. Tune in to The Raw Report with Robin Ayers, Monday through Friday, 6 to 7 p.m. I'm your host, Robin Ayers. Join me every weekday with some of the best entertainment contributors in the business as we break down what's going on, who's got next, and what not to miss. Only on The Raw Report with Robin Ayers.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
JP Morgan Chase is building on the investments in California and around the country to help close the racial wealth gap and build a more equitable future. As part of JP Morgan Chase commitment, they are taking action to help improve financial wealth and access to banking in the Black community, helping more people open low-cost checking and savings accounts, hosting community seminars with supporting Black-led institutions by building awareness about financial investments, hiring community managers, and opening community center branches like Crenshaw, Inglewood, and downtown LA. Visit today, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity. Again, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity. Get the tools to help reach your financial goals. Visit today, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity. Again, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity.
KBLA Talk 1580 stands for Unity and Healing. African Focus Incorporated is a nonprofit organization based in California that focuses on the growth and well-being of Africans all around the world. Their mission is to promote the well-being of people of African descent through knowledge and appreciation of one another by building a bridge of love and understanding. African Focus Incorporated strives for cultural, educational, and economic growth. They're the organization behind the African Family Induction Ceremony, African Goodwill Awards, African Focus Trailblazer Tours, African Dance Competition, and Showcase Los Angeles, Family Day, Good News Windows Microfinance Project, and more. To volunteer, travel with African Focus, or to attend one of their community building events, please call 310-676-7730. That's 310-676-7300. Or visit AfricanFocus.org. This is a diaspora-wide community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580, where hate loses and love wins.
So Bob Iger, who with his bonuses earned $46 million last year, Barry Diller, who is worth $4+ billion, are saying that the actors are being unrealistic, the writers are being greedy, that they could destabilize the whole business. That's what Diller says. The whole business could collapse. They're crying broke and saying that the actors and writers are asking for too much. I feel like what I'm hearing from the CEOs is so similar to each other that I feel like they have some really bad publicist telling them to act like Marie Antoinette. Because to me, that's how out of touch it is to say you're being unrealistic. I'm getting $46 million a year, but you wanting a decent residual and having a wage that enables you to buy lunch while you're working for me, that's unrealistic.
Well, interestingly enough, a few years ago, Hollywood did a film called Simone, starring Al Pacino, which dealt with how Hollywood moguls sought to replace stars with computer images. Now, that sounded like science fiction at the time. Now it seems like a possibility. And I think that what is happening right now on the streets of Los Angeles is that the actors and the writers, particularly the actors, 160,000 strong, realize that the moguls are trying to break the union.
Yeah.
They may opt for a technological solution where you really don't need human beings to star in movies.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm looking right now on my phone, if you're watching me on YouTube, because a friend of mine had sent me a piece that was, that was posted on Viola Davis's website about an AI who's working as a supermodel, who's been a black woman, dark-skinned black woman supermodel who's actually an AI, was created by white creators, white creator named James Wilson, and who is actually replacing real-life black women models and is owned and operated by a white person. There's something so problematic about that.
To put it mildly.
Yeah. I mean, she might be virtual, but she's owned by a white guy and earning money for him. Woo! That's terrible. What do you, I mean, we've got just about a minute here, Dr. Horne. What do you say about this season of strikes? Because it's not just Hollywood. UPS one on the horizon, you know, organizing at Starbucks and Amazon, and the hotel workers are on strike here, et cetera, et cetera.
It's a breath of fresh air, obviously, particularly this UPS strike, which may jump off as early as August 1st, that is to say a few weeks from now. It might go down in history as the most significant strike in the history of the United States, which is really saying something.
Wow.
And when workers are on the march, when unions are on the march, that helps the KBLA audience, which is mostly working class, mostly selling their labor for a wage. And so it boosts us all. And it also is a blow, ultimately, against the MAGA Republicans.
Find Dr. Gerald Horne on YouTube. Find his latest book. Support the people that support us and make us smarter. Dr. Gerald Horne, thank you so much for being with us and sharing your brain with us this morning.
Thank you for inviting me.
And we're talking with Fernando Pullum next. Arts, activism, youth, all rolled into one. We got a lot to talk about. KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
Good morning. I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Today is expected to be another day in a Suffolk County, New York jail following his arrest last